Hi, I'm Alia Sabinas, a trans-feminine individual from the lands of Latvia, a writer, a musician, a political activist, and I do so much more, but I'm also a goth, as you can see, and today I want to talk about politics in the goth subculture. First, I need to mention that this brief remake of my video I was making from mid-2023 to the start of 2024, and as I've gained so much more knowledge and learned to articulate myself a lot better than I did in the midst of 2023 when I wrote the script, of course, but now let's talk about politics and golf. So we've definitely all heard goth is political, goth is a political subculture, and whether we like it or not, it's a solid fact. We cannot deny it, since it's all rooted in goth, post-punk, and punk history, and after all, what a subculture even is. Then what is a subculture? A subculture within sociology is a term for a group of people within a society, a culture, who hold different values from the society at large. Members of the subculture typically have shared beliefs and values that draw them to it and are codified by their subculture. These members of a subculture often having beliefs or interests at variance with those at the larger culture. And what is a counterculture? A counterculture, often where you link to specific subcultures, is a way of life and a set of attitudes opposed to or at variance with the prevailing social norms. The status quo, the standard, the accepted. And I'd also like to define what exactly I'm talking about when referring to political beliefs. I'm not talking about political affiliation, even though, yeah, that might have to go hand in hand sometimes with political beliefs, but political beliefs, my personal vocabulary, refer to values, views, opinions, and beliefs a person holds regarding to the way society functions, how the system is built, and ultimately what a person feels is moral or not. And sometimes these beliefs end up being the way they are mirroring the individual's sense of empathy. And as I'm making this video, no, I'm not saying I'll go vote Democrat, blue, no matter who, because affiliation, especially the way we see it in my example of how the USA works, never ultimately identifies the person's core beliefs, since it's in a system that is directed towards a two-party bureaucracy, leaving everything on the table to be decided. But vote someone casts is very misleading strategy, okay? But yeah, I'd love to mention that no goth would ever vote for our infamously favorite fascist orange guy. So what's the politics of our goth subculture? Can't I finally talk about the juicy stuff? No, we first need to assess on the history of goth, of post-punk, and of punk after all. Punk originated in the UK and also quickly spread to the USA, as later were the most first goth act too. In the mid to late 70s of the 20th century as a rebellion against the mainstream capitalism and consumerism, commercialism in music, societal complacency, ultimately ending up as a raw and DIY counterculture, with anti-establishment ethos and self-expression as a way to rebel against conformity and with the status quo. Then came the post-punk scene. Etymologically speaking, it encompasses the fact that it came after punk. It was beyond what punk originally was. Emerging in the late 1970s, it blended the raw musicality and the ethos of punk with more beyond-sounding music, energy more focused on experimentation rather than expressing anger, emotions against the system expressed more avant-garde rather than in the scream your guts out against the establishment type of way. And post-punk gave birth to a wide array of new musical styles, but still keeping the same message of rebellion and non-conformity to its audience by experimenting and going beyond what our society finds to be the norm. And of course, out of the post-punk scene, finally had the goth subculture carved this way. Darker themes, death-causing silence being torn apart, mirrors shattered into pieces, and the taboo being coined as a part of the natural. The natural we have to embrace and honor. Goth, as we can see, still embraces the rejection of the mainstream, condemning the status quo that encourages capitalism, consumerism, and conformity, and self-expression as a rebellion. Dressing as death itself, the death of societal expectations, complacency, and overt ignorance. Goths rather embrace being dark, taboo, and unacceptable to the average individual than to live in blissful ignorance, ignoring and being complacent in all this horror happening in the world. So what are these core beliefs of this taboo embracing counterculture if you need them in a list? Anti-capitalism and anti-consumerism being fought for in a do-it-yourself ethic, supporting small and independent artists, thrifting and creating your own clothing, participating in mutual aid, working towards freedom of association, and combating corporate authoritarianism. We also have anti-mainstream, which in goth is rejecting music and other art as a means of making money in a society where everything is commercialized and made purely for the profit, but rather speaking out against by actually making art that rejects this mainstreamism that includes self-expression in very eccentric fashion, makeup, hairstyles, speaking out against commonly ignored injustices and participating in local shows that rely on the collective mutuality to survive and thrive. Non-conformity, individual expression to fight against the status quo, artistic creativity that blurs the bright lines of normality, and the emphasis of following your own self-made identity even if it goes against conventional standards. Standing out against the ignorance that comes to be complacency. Goths aren't afraid to cross the line, to embrace the taboo, to shatter expectation, so Goths surely cannot let another ignorant soul fuel this atrocious injustice happening in this world. Goths believe your silence is complacency, and this complacency kills innocent lives. So we also have intersectional radical feminism. Goths acknowledge that patriarchy is interconnected with all types of hierarchy, oppression, and Goth obviously isn't dominated by rich white heterosexual cisgender men, and we see why not being any of the given it could empower the individuals slain to fight their oppression, this time through being Goth. Goths recognize and challenge how factors like race, sexuality, class, and others intersect with gender inequalities. It's important to acknowledge Goth as not just being feminist but also radical and intersectional. Goth not only celebrates androgyny, allows boys to cry, fights for fostering gender egalitarianism to prove sexual liberation and the rejection of mainstream patriarchal values, but also recognizes that Goth must treat all marginalized folk accordingly. For example, not to bypass fashion as it oppresses poor women and even children, especially of color, and also as another example to treat all symbols we now deem as crucial to the Gothic community, like the Ankh or the Eye of Ra, which both originate from Egypt, North Africa. Also accordingly, knowing their history and not appropriating from cultures we don't know shit about. And then we have anti-racism, as briefly mentioned in the last one. People of color have literally provided with the foundations of our culture, and we must repent to anything that tries to tell otherwise. Rock was invented by a black person and was sacred in North Africa. Christian imagery, Gothic cathedrals, rosaries, crucifixes came from the region of Palestine, where Jesus was born, and the first song to ever get attributed as Gothic was being a shock rock song by African-American singer-songwriter Screaming Jay Hawkins. We still see racism being tolerated in the Goth community? Come on, guys. And lastly, we have a broader term, opposing colonialism. Whether on the foundation of dogmatic religious control, imperialism, or the profit of capitalism or white supremacy, Goths stand against it. As Goths find no place in their culture for dogmatic religious supremacists, partly even mocking these creatures with their imagery, they somehow ideologically stand against the meaning of sometimes. Weird. Goths urge decolonialization through cultural appreciation, the raising of marginalized voices, through rejection of the patriarchy and capitalism. We speak against colonial injustice, and we must stay united with the oppressed. So does all this inherently mean a Goth can only vote blue no matter who? Fuck no. Goth usually opposes the two-party system, to be honest, so this is stupid to put Goths into the box of cannot be Republican, so is a Democrat. A Goth is post-Goth, a Goth is post-punk. Goth opposes this bureaucracy, and a Goth seeks out a future where only truth is shared. Thank you for going through this journey with me, so goodbye for now. Make Goth political again. Love you.